Hey, warriors. Whew, don't look at my hair. So, anyways, lately I've been feeling, and I'm sure there's a ton of you that have also, um, ancestral patterns rising. And it's not always from trauma or pain, you know? Um, Sometimes it feels more like breath echoes. Do you know what I mean? Um, they're like subtle movements inside the body, um, emotions without any type of personal origin. Do you know what I mean? Or like strength that you didn't generate. Do you know what I mean? And it raises an important distinction, really, because not everything that echoes through you is yours to carry. I do realize that sometimes it's yours to complete. Do you know what I mean? Um, you know, so like we've been taught, okay, that to view rather ancestry mostly through wounds, okay? Generational trauma, unhealed pain, cycles of survival, that kind of shit. And I'm not, and yes, that does exist, obviously. What inherited distortion. Um, but it's only half of the inheritance. You know, strength travels too. Nobody ever talks about it. Um, inherited distortion, it tends to show up as, a chronic fear without any cause, like my fear of heights. Do you know what I mean? There's no reason for it, and it is completely fucking irrational. Um, Scarcity patterns, emotional suppression, survival hypervigilance. Do you know what I mean? And it's like these are adaptive patterns, passed down to help prior generations, to survive harsh conditions, and they were protective ones. But now they're just, restrictive, if you will. Do you know what I'm saying? Um, Inherited strength, that obviously feels very, very different. It can show up as, I don't know, resilience, that you never learned, instinctual wisdom. Do you know what I mean? Um, a deep connection to, the land, uh, spiritual sensitivity, that kind of thing. I could go on all day. Leadership without any training, um, creative or healing abilities. Do you know what I mean? There's tons of this shit going on right now. Um, there are capacities that lived in our lineage, waiting for these very fucking conditions, to safe enough, to express them for right now. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, my phone's wobbly. I am having to record different than normal. Um, but yeah, I mean, honestly, I really believe they were just sitting there waiting for times like right now, you know? Um, what else did I want to talk about where this was concerned? Um, but anyways, yeah, inherited strength, you know, I don't know. Let me talk about this. When you talk about breath echoes, okay, this is, let me tell you what that points to, okay? Like patterns carried not just in a story. Do you know what I mean? Um, but in your nervous system, in your posture, in your breath rhythm, you know, um, in instinctual responses. Do you know what I mean? You may feel grief that isn't personal. Things like that, or or courage that might feel ancient. Things like that. Um, I don't know. What else did I want to talk about? Anyway, that's lineage. The things I just, examples I just gave you, that's lineage, moving through biology and consciousness simultaneously. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I just think this kind of shit is pretty fucking awesome. Um, but some ancestral material arises simply just to be witnessed, not for us to live them out again. You don't have to repeat all this fucking suffering just to honor your lineage. Do you know what I mean? And that's what we're pretty much taught. But you don't have to carry pain to prove your loyalty. I don't know. Some patterns, they surface just so they can end with you. I mean, you know, but others, I do realize, others rise because they were interrupted. Maybe they were, you know, dreams that our ancestors never pursued, voices that were never fucking heard. You know what I mean? Strength that maybe they weren't able to embody. Do you know what I'm saying? But my point is that completion doesn't have to mean fucking suffering. It can mean expression. You may be finishing courage that they couldn't or weren't allowed to show. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe speaking truth that they weren't allowed to speak. Think about it. You know what I mean? What about freedom? Freedom that they weren't able to live. That kind of shit, And now we are able to. And not as a burden, but as a continuation, I don't know. A simple way to feel the distinction, between the two is that, inherited distortions, they're obviously heavy, contracting, fear-based. And inherited strength, it feels grounding, expansive, purposeful. One drains your life, the other one supplies it. Do you see my point? Even if it arrives through, like emotion. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. As collective consciousness shifts, lineage material rises for integration. Do you know what I mean? Because personal awakening doesn't happen in isolation. We know this. It ripples backward and forward through ancestral lines. When you stabilize something in yourself, it resolves echoes, behind you. I don't know. So if you have been feeling these things like I have, because we are all feeling so much more these days, I mean, don't assume that it's all just trauma. Don't assume that. Do you know what I mean? Because some of what's rising, it it is distortion asking to end. Do you know what I mean? But some of it is strength asking to live through you. Very seriously. Not everything that echoes through us is ours to carry. But some of it is ours to complete. I mean, and knowing the difference, that changes the entire, weight of the path we're on. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I just thought I'd talk about it. Maybe some of you are feeling the way I'm feeling. I love you.